And welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we've got another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video for you. Specifically, we're going to be looking at teams that slap, and in particular, the 3v3 defense. So we've got the return of 3v3 GAC coming up here in the upcoming week, and this is kind of going to become a monthly series for us here, where we do teams that slap both in 3v3 as well as 5v5 GAC, both offense and defense. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, folks, so we are looking at the top 10 3v3 GAC teams on defense. So most of these are going to be based off of the .gg website. If you're unfamiliar with it, make sure you guys go check it out. It's really got a lot of helpful information in it. But also, the other big thing here that we have with this is that I always try to have a bonus team at the end of each of these videos that is a little bit more on the speculative side. It's one that maybe wasn't around during the last season of 3v3, in this case, GAC, and we're really expecting it to be a pretty big player moving into the current GAC season. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first of our top 10, and these are not in any particular order. I do kind of have them grouped a little bit. I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second, but they're not really in a top 10 per se order. So the first team we've got here is what I'm going to term as the Sith Empire ish team. So number one, you need Malgus. Malgus is far and away the most important part of this team. If you have him, you can really pair him with kind of any combination of different Sith Empire characters, and it's going to be a pretty strong team. For instance, the most common one that you pair him with is going to be probably Malak. And then after Malak, it's either Revan or Bastila Fallen Sean. Bastila Sean Fallen, I should say. Personally, last season, I ran Malgus actually without Malak, and I ran them with Revan and Bastila Fallen Sean, and then I used my Malak with Palpatine and Mara Jade down below, you can see there. Now, that is going to shift for me a little bit for two reasons. One, I am getting Starkiller here. He may not be, at maximum potential by the time this season starts, but the other big change for me is that I now have Darth Talon. If you have Darth Talon, that's why I said Sith Empire-ish, I highly recommend putting Talon in with Malgus. She's great with Traya, we all know that, but especially in 3v3, you're already going to have your 3 locked in for that. So you really have her as a leftover, and in my opinion, she's going to work really, really well under the Malgus lead with Malak in that team. Then that leaves you with Revan and Bastila Sean Fallen. I keep switching those names for some reason. With another Sith Empire. For instance, for me, I usually would put Marauder with that group of 3. I typically use that team on offense, though. I do not use them on defense very frequently. I don't think that Revan and Bastila Sean Fallen are that great on defense without Malak. If you have Malak with them, they are a pretty solid defense. Certainly not the same level that Malgus is, though. Malgus just takes the Sith Empire to a whole nother level, folks. Whole nother level. So there you've kind of got like one crew there that's really definitively the best, in my opinion. Malgus, Malak, and Talon. But then you can kind of sub and or tweak the rest of it as you needed based on what you have with your roster. Team number 2, we have Palpatine, Mara Jade as your core with Starkiller. Now, that was the number 1 version of this in the last season, but that's because Savage Press and Luminara had just gotten their Omicrons in the last season. So I have these two tagged on at the end because I actually think you're going to see more of a Savage Press lead with Starkiller and Luminara than you will with Palpatine and Mara Jade. Don't get me wrong, if somebody does not, for instance like me, I do not have Luminara up and running yet. I'm probably not going to run the Savage iterant of this. I could throw in another Jedi tank in there if I needed to. It depends on your roster. But if you don't have Lumi's Omicron, I don't think it's going to be quite as effective with a Savage lead. It still certainly is a really, really good team. If you have another Jedi that you can throw in, a really well-relic Jedi that you're not using, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say that you do have Juhani from the 5v5 team. Let's say that you've got Juhani there. You could throw Juhani in there, and that gives you your team. So it's certainly not out of the question to have Savage as the lead this upcoming season. I'm just telling you guys that the number one from the previous season was the Palpatine Mara Jade team combo with Starkiller. Like I said, I think that's going to change a little bit this season. I really expect SWGOH Oppress to be the lead going into the season for most people in 3v3. Okay, team number 3. This is a QuiGon-led Jedi Knight Anakin team. Now, the number one version of this has Cam in it, and in my opinion, it is far and away the best version of this team. Unfortunately, some of us, myself included, do not have Cam, so we have to figure out what we can use instead. And in this case, Mace Windu is a great substitute. Still a very good team. If you don't have Cam, this is still a really tough team to beat on defense. Bad Batch really struggles with it in 3v3. It can really make a lot of teams struggle to defeat it outside of GLs, obviously. Certainly one to consider if you've got them moderately well relicked. If you've got a QuiGon Omicron on him, definitely use it. Put him on defense. You're going to love the holds that you get, guys. Almost always get a hold from me. Almost always. Next up, this is a little bit controversial. Gas is very good on offense. He can solo teams pretty easily, but I think he is best on defense. GG kind of agrees. There's a lot of people that struggle with Gas on defense. I personally like him on defense. Shh, don't tell my opponents. But I like this team a lot on defense. The best version of this, folks, is Skywalker with Rex and 5s. Now, you might want to tweak that a little bit. For instance, let's say that you are going to run Shock T and the other 2 clones from the 501st. Maybe you want Rex and 5s to go with Shock T, and then you put your other 2, Arc and Echo, with Skywalker. Really just kind of depends on how you're using them. Offense, obviously, is going to be a little different than defense as well. If you're using them on offense, you might not need Rex and 5s on this team, but if you're looking to get as many holds as possible, this is the version that you're looking for in particular. Move on. So, those teams, I would say, are the well-established, solid teams that are going to work well into the future. Now, the next group that we have here are kind of the new up-and-coming teams, and or ones we don't see as often. So first and foremost, we've got Adrad. Adrad, I have seen Adrad on defense a lot, folks, in my level. So I'm an 8 million GP, just hit 8 mil, mid-level player. Mid-level players, we see Adrad a lot at this stage in Kyber 2 in particular. So I just fell to Kyber 3. I was so mad. The very last match, I lost and fell to Kyber 3. But typically I'm somewhere between upper Kyber 3 and lower Kyber 2, and I am seeing him all the time. Really tough team on defense. The best version, in my opinion, that I've faced is Adrad, Jin, and SRP. Now, not everybody has our SRP all relicked up and ready to roll, so if you are going for Adrad and going for the profundity, more than likely you've got Cassian up and running as well. That's probably the most common team that you're going to see, Adrad, Jin, and Cassian. The next best version of it, other than SRP in my opinion, is K2SO. Probably the least likely team for you to encounter, simply because most people are not going to have K2SO really that well developed at this point. It is certainly a very difficult team, though, especially if you have the Zeta on K2SO. Whew, boy, rough team. Real rough team, folks. I thought I had a secret counter to this. It doesn't quite work in 5v5. I do have a little bit of a secret counter in 3v3, though. It's worked almost every time for me. Fun fact, not spoiling that in this video. Moving on to the next one. We have Maul. Maul, and in this particular scenario, Candy and Bo-Katan. Those are probably, in my opinion, the best version of this team. Candy is pretty much always a guarantee, in my opinion. You need Candy with Maul because of the whole turn meter thing and how that all works. Now, Bo-Katan, you could argue you could pull her out. The thing with Bo-Katan is, though, that she gives them that protection regen. You pull her out and suddenly you lose all that protection regen. So if you're looking maybe for a team that's just going to get one hold and call it a day, and then you're super happy with that, then you might want to go with Armor instead. Maybe even Django. Depends on who's faster. For me, my Armor is faster. For me personally, if I put Armor in for Bo-Katan, that means I'm going to try to get one hold and then be very happy with that, because that's going to be the toughest version of this team for my opponent to face. If I'm hoping to get multiple holds, though, then I'm probably going to put in Bo-Katan, because that's going to give me the most survivability, the most protection regen, etc., etc., etc. So again, it depends on what roster you've got running. You could also really, really mess with an opponent and throw in Watt instead of Bo-Katan. I don't recommend it in 3v3s, but it's probably the most dangerous version of this team. Okay, next one that we have here that's kind of not that common, but I'm expecting to see it more and more frequently, and that is the Tuscans. People are getting to the point now where they just kind of have extra Omicrons. I know that sounds weird, but people are. They do. They just have extra Omicrons, and they don't want to use them on TW, and they don't want to use them on TB. So let's throw them on the Tuscans, especially as more of them are becoming requirements for other key characters. So don't be surprised, especially if you're in the upper end of the spectrum, folks, if you start to see more Tuscan teams. And man, they are difficult. They are not fun to play against. I have faced one of these teams before, and it was a pain in the butt. Total pain in the butt. So if you've got Tuscans up and running, you've got the Omicron on them, put them on D and watch your opponent sweat it out. Now, obviously, if you don't have them up to relic levels, if you don't have the Omicron, forget everything I just said. Just throw them in the garbage. Forget you had them. Move along, to quote our Stormtrooper. Move along. Now, next up, we have kind of our standard teams. These are not necessarily world-changing, amazingly great defensive teams, but they're not necessarily new and upcoming teams either, like an Adrad, for instance. Bosk. With a Zam Omicron, we need to mention. Zam Omicron here, folks. This team, it just, I don't know, it just does it. It just gets the job done. I almost always get at least one hold from this team because people just underestimate how good they are in 3v3 and how fast they are in particular because of Zam and her Omicron. I know it's a dated team. I know it doesn't have the best mechanics. It's not going to get the most holds out of probably your teams that you have. It's not the sexy play, folks, but it just gets it done. It's just a really good team on defense. I don't know what to tell you. If you've got a lot of bounty hunters that are pretty solid, consider using this, guys. I know if you're using Lord Vader counters and all that jazz, that totally changes things. But thank goodness that Datacron is gone, so now you don't have to worry as much about that. Anyway, let's not dwell on that. Moving on to the next team we've got here, Dash Rendar. Now, Dash has kind of two variations of this that are very good. You can have either the kind of the staple, which is Dash, Vandor, and L3, or you can have kind of a punch-up team a little bit. It's a little bit more difficult. I would say just more dangerous. Not necessarily more difficult, just more dangerous. And that is Dash, Han Solo, and Chewie. Again, this team's been around for a long time, folks. It's pretty solid. It's a solid staple of a team. Most people are not going to underestimate this at stage of the game, but it's going to cost your opponent a pretty strong team. And that's really the goal with this. With a team like this, a team like the Bosk team, you're just hoping to really cost them a pretty strong team so that one of your other zones can kind of catch them off guard. If you can't tell, I like to put these guys in the front. Next up, we've got our... Oops, I don't want to give away the bonus just yet. Next up, our 10th team that we have here, folks, is a Mandalorian-led scoundrel team. Now, again, same thing. They're not world-changing. They've been around for a while. But again, it's not an easy team to beat. It takes a fairly strong team to beat it. And it's going to give your team, or your opponent, I should say, some headache, which is what we're looking for. So Mando, obviously the ideal comp is Kuil and IG-11, but you can get creative with this. You can throw in some other teams. You could throw a Nest in there if you wanted to. You could throw Bo-Katan in. You could throw Dengar in. There's just a lot of options under a BAM leadership here, folks. So again, solid team. Not going to get you the sexy award, but it's a solid defensive team. All right, now that leads us up to our bonus team that I think we're going to see a lot of in this new season of GAC that we have not seen before, and I think everyone saw this coming, and that is Dr. Aphra. A lot of people are probably going to argue that Dr. Aphra is going to be best on offense, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but nobody knows how she works. Nobody has had to fight her yet. When in doubt, put the new toy on defense and watch your opponents struggle, because they just don't know what to do. It's a beautiful thing. It's one of the best things about being at the cutting edge of the game. People don't know how to counter the new stuff. Throw it on defense and just revel in the glory that is your opponent's frustrations. Pretty straightforward, folks. So that is our top 10 plus our bonus content here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed all of that. With that being said, if you did enjoy today's content, everybody, I appreciate if you guys gave us a thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to catch more content coming out from this channel for SWGOH, or Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, please subscribe and turn on notifications down below. Last but not least, if you would like to join the live discussion on Discord or the live GAC matches over on Twitch, you can check out both of those links in the video description down below. All right, everybody, catch you next time.